In this video, I got to sit down with Oliver Brossmann, who is the founder of Prevolve Footwear. We had a great conversation about the current state of the football boot industry, and Oliver got to talk about the main reasons he started his company and the impact that he's hoping to have. Now, if you're someone who's ever found it difficult to get the right fit out of your football boots, I definitely think you'll find something in this conversation interesting. I really enjoyed this talk, so without further ado, here's the full-length discussion. All right, awesome. I think we're up and running.
Nice.
Okay, so maybe we should do like quick introduction. So I'm Douglas. I run Upper 90 Football, and Oliver, I want to give you a second, just like introduce yourself, introduce like Prevolve, the company that you've started, that you work in, and maybe tell us about some of the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Oliver Brossmann. I'm the founder and CEO of Prevolve Footwear, and we make the bio cleats, which are custom fit, 3D printed minimalist soccer cleat. And been working on it for quite a few years. I was injured as a teenager playing soccer and kind of had this idea to make a more healthy soccer cleat. That was more than 10 years ago. And so just been working on it, and lately been actually selling some pairs and distributing some pairs to reviewers as well, and trying to just continually improve the product. So yeah.
Hell yeah, man. So you've been playing for a while, I take it. Did you start your playing journey when you were, like how old were you when you started playing?
Yeah, I mean, I was like 6 years old. My dad actually was my coach growing up, so played on a club team for almost 10 years with him as my coach. But yeah, I got injured when I was 16. I had patellar tendonitis in both knees. I had surgeries on both knees, and that kind of cut the career short. I was pretty serious about it. I wanted to see how far I could go, but once I had those injuries, it just, it was at a bad time as well, because that's kind of like your last 2 years of high school when you have a chance to, maybe get a scholarship to a good college or something like that. So yeah, timing was bad, but it kind of led me on this different path. So
yeah, it's a tough time, because it's when you are trying to make the decision if it's something that you're going to pursue, professionally or at a higher level. And yeah, I know I myself faced a lot of injuries. When I was in high school, I think we started playing around similar times. I was a little later, around maybe 9 or 10. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit more just like about Prevolve, about your inspiration to start a company, and maybe the best place to start could be the existing landscape of the football boot world. So we're talking Nike, Adidas, Puma, like the companies that are currently like, dominating the space, and that have been dominating for, I mean, pretty much you could say the last 50, 60 plus years. It's really been the same players in the game.
yeah.
So what do you think? And, I can't even tell you how many boots I've tried on over the past like 2 years, but what do you, if you were to make some criticisms and just talk about where boots are currently, what do you think those brands might be doing wrong, or what are they not getting right in the current landscape?
Yeah. Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Where would I start? I mean, I think probably the most common thing about cleats that I think is detrimental to athletes is just how narrow they are. Now everything I say, there's the caveat that everyone's feet are different. So some people do have pretty narrow feet, and that's not going to be as much of an issue for them. But even so, like most boots, traditional
Got some right
shapes.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are Nike Premiers. Yeah, pretty narrow.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's narrow, but it's not just narrow. It narrows out quite a bit near the pinky toe and the big toe. So the angles are, pushing your toes in, which is not natural for your toes. And so that I think is something that they do out of necessity, because the performance in the boot, you have to be locked in place. So they want performance, but it's at a, there's a trade-off for your long-term health.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the big differences with the bio cleats, is that wide toe box, which, we provide toe spacers to go in there to still lock you in. So, it's understandable why they've gotten so narrow, the traditional cleats. It's just unfortunate that it comes with, this cost of your body's proper function.
It's funny. I almost think you're being too generous to the because I completely agree with you. I think they are too narrow. Well, and as you mentioned, not just narrow, but it's about the shape of
Hmm.
traditional shoes. And this is something I notice is a problem, not just in football boots, in soccer cleats, but in shoes in general. I like if you look at Converse, Vans, they're not anatomically shaped, as in
Yeah.
like they don't follow the shape of the foot, and it's I think it's detrimental to performance, whether it's like an everyday shoe or even if it's a shoe you're wearing for whether you're playing soccer or even like a basketball shoe for any athletic performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's a great guy I follow online. He's a Squat University. That's his YouTube
Uh,
channel. Yeah, he does like lifting advice, things like that. And he published a great video where he just said, in simplest terms, there's no documented evidence that a narrow toe box produces an athletic advantage.
mm,
There's now obviously there's the caveat that when you're wearing a football boot, like it has to have good lockdown. Like you can't have your foot like sliding around in a
mhm,
boot, but
mhm.
there's nothing to suggest that having your toes crammed together at the end of the boot is going to give you more performance. If anything, there's a lot more to suggest the contrary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, overall, I agree with that, and especially when you mentioned like more casual shoes or
Hmm.
like some other sports, like even just running. Like, there's no reason you should have a narrow toe box.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to explain why they've done it, there are a couple of reasons, to try and understand why it's this way. And one is the shoes look sleeker. I mean, when they're not wide at
Yeah.
the end. So
Aesthetic
yeah,
perspective
which,
for sure.
I mean, that's if you care about your health, you kind of have to, like, to me now, I look at a pair of shoes and I like it. It's just something internally that comes, from my experience. I'm like, I like it when I see that it's wide. So it's something that's a bit subjective. But the other thing is also manufacturing. Actually, it's a little bit easier to manufacture a shoe that narrows at the end. It's a small point, but I think when you're making hundreds of thousands of pairs of shoes, then the ability to delast a shoe, like taking the last out, becomes a lot easier if it's narrower at the front. So that's another
That's
possible reason.
that's a really interesting point.
Yeah,
I'd never considered that. It's okay.
yeah, but I mean, they still, I think, are. It's for them at the end of the day. It does seem like they're motivated by sales, by
Yeah.
making money on their product, and a lot of that comes down to if it's on a shelf and someone likes how it looks,
Yeah.
that's maybe now, and you mentioned like that it's been this this industry has been the same for a long time, the same players, but I do think actually things are shifting a little bit with the amount of information out there. Like,
Mhm.
you and other reviewers are putting out a lot of information about boots that I think 10 years ago was not available. So I think there's some hope that things are opening up a little bit. um
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that you have so many advantages as someone who has like running a smaller business where you're creating your own football boots. Um, and I think that's important to note because a lot of these companies like just take Nike and Adidas for example. I mean, Nike controls more than half of the market share when it comes to football boots. They can't really make design changes as freely, I think, as someone like you could.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if there may be many people at Nike who maybe they believe in barefoot shoes, maybe they wear them personally,
Hmm.
but if Nike even makes a single shoe with a slightly more anatomical design, something with a more comfortable toe box, something where I'm not going to have like 50 people in my comment section saying, "Are these good for wide feet?" When in reality, your feet are normal. It's just the shoes that are like narrow.
Yeah.
They can't really make those design changes freely because then they have 1,000 other shoes that they sell where now people are going to ask, why is that shoe narrow? Like, why do these shoes have different designs? So they're kind of I think in some ways they're held back, by how many models they have, and it limits them in a way from a design perspective because making a radical change, it could be dangerous for them for their business. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, totally. There's an inertia there, and
Mhm.
I actually, I've talked with some people who've worked within Nike who've had more of the barefoot philosophy,
Mhm.
and they've tried to implement changes. And the way I understand it is that a lot of the like final decisions on a product at Nike are made by the marketing managers, or like the
Mm.
marketing team kind of gets the final say. So they've had like the Nike Free, for example, the running shoe that had some principles that were, more minimalist. And actually, I've seen some mock-ups of that shoe when it was actually like extremely minimal, like a real actual barefoot shoe. And through the iterations of marketing kind of pushing back, like it got to a point where it was still kind of minimalist, but it wasn't really when it was
Mm.
released. And it progressively got more like a normal or traditional running shoe over time. So I think it's also like who are the decision makers within a company. That's kind of
Yeah.
part of it as well. But I agree, like they've kind of dug themselves a hole of like this is what their shoes look like, and if they changed it, people would be very confused.
Yeah, it's almost like whether they like it or not, their shoes look the way they do, and it would take a lot and probably a long time for them to, very gradually make those design changes.
Yeah, and just they're like you said, they're the leaders right now in market share. So
Hmm.
there's not like an impetus to change. I think I know barefoot shoes are becoming more popular, according to Google Trends, but I think it will need to, grow at least
Yeah,
twice the size of what it is for it to be like something that might change their direction a little bit.
yeah. I think that from my perspective, at least, having gotten into barefoot shoes for the past few years, they definitely are big in the running community. I know that to some extent they have a cult following there, and I think in the life, just the general lifestyle shoe, they're getting bigger. I have a couple of examples because I have a few, but this is
Okay.
so this is Field Grounds, like this is a
Okay.
German company, and anyone watching, like if you want a casual shoe, these are ones like I would recommend. But this is a German company, um, kind of expensive, but like they're pretty nice, kind of like a Vans equivalent. And
Hmm.
then these are Tolos, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
yeah, this is started by an American guy, I think a former lacrosse player who also suffered from some injuries.
Yeah.
And this is as far as like everyday sneakers, this is one of my like favorite shoes. It used to be white, if you can believe it. It's disgusting now. But yeah, great shoe. And that kind of like segues me into like your shoe and Prevolve. I wanted to talk a little bit more about like exactly how the boot's made because I know I went through your website. I know 3D printing is a big factor for how
Hmm.
these boots are constructed, but if we get like a little bit more granular talking about the specific parts,
Yeah.
um, so I guess maybe we could start at the sole plate here. So this
Mhm.
it looks to me like it is 3D printed.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that correct? Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Every part on the shoe is actually printed besides the laces.
Okay.
So
That would make sense.
yeah, and I think something that people might get confused by when I say that is that a lot of the parts are actually printed flat,
Mhm.
besides the cleat plate, and so they're formed to create the upper. Um, so it's not all printed in like one go. That would be
Yeah.
the dream, but the machine to do that isn't really out there yet. So there's still some assembly that goes on
Mhm.
with making that shoe. Yeah.
Right. So you have the sole plate that's printed with one material. It feels almost like a harder nylon, like plastic, right?
Yeah, it's actually polyurethane.
Polyurethane.
They're
Okay.
all TPU. Yeah, polyurethanes. Different durometers though, so it is stiffer than like the upper. The
Mhm.
upper has some softer materials, but they're also polyurethane.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Do you have any like engineering background prior to like starting Prevolve or like as far as like your educational experience? Was there anything that like led you in that direction?
Well, I mean, I took some R&D
Hmm.
courses in college, but I actually was a business major. So
Okay.
I've taken like some engineering here and there. But I mean, when I was in college, there weren't really 3D printing courses.
Right.
It wasn't as much of a thing. So I did have a printer pretty early on that I was just playing around with. So I'm mostly taught by the internet. really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was just curious because I did mechanical engineering in school and I
Okay.
got some exposure to 3D printing, but nothing quite honestly like the a lot of the 3D printing I did personally, yeah, I think maybe you could see the limitations in the final product. Like sometimes it could be a little fragile, a little bit brittle. But
Mhm.
this sole plate itself, I was very impressed when I was playing. It's like it feels very durable, and it also it bends well in the center here between the heel and the forefoot. And I
Mhm.
see these like smaller ridges,
Mhm.
um, it kind of in the middle of the sole plate. Are those intentionally there for for the durability of the sole plate? Is it kind of a function thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the idea is to make the arch a bit more flexible there.
Yeah.
Which I think you noted in your review video, and
Yeah. I
that's
love
like,
that.
yeah, it's crazy because that's like something that I do not see on almost any football boot. Like,
It's not the norm. It's not the norm
yeah,
at all. It's not
which
the, it doesn't make sense.
yeah, it's how your foot actually works. Like the arch is meant to compress and expand
Yeah.
to absorb impact. And I think the reasoning behind it is when you shoot, like it having that really stiff arch sort of makes it so that your foot can't bend back at all. But your foot is perfectly capable of flexing and becoming rigid. So it's just like it's like a crutch for your foot that you don't
E-
really need.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny because more generally more expensive football boots like 250, 300, like top end like Nike or Adidas models tend to have the
Mhm.
most rigid sole plates.
Right.
Whereas this is like $100. This is a Nike Premier, and it
Uh-huh.
actually has a slightly better bend to it.
Right.
But no, my, sometimes it can be personal preference. I understand that, but I definitely prefer, and I would generally recommend, uh, like if someone were to ask me which one to get, one that has a little bit more of a bend, because I find it also less fatiguing for my feet. Like if I'm running for 2 hours, if a shoe has a really rigid sole plate and doesn't like let your foot pronate, it
Mhm.
can fatigue your feet. Like
Yeah.
your feet are get more tired if they can't
Mhm.
move
Right.
like properly. So that was one thing I really liked about beyond the fact that this is like an 8 designated AG sole plate with all the conical studs, which is
Mhm.
great. I love that it has that bend, and I agree that's something a lot of companies don't really think about.
Yeah.
And then the upper itself, that's printed from a separate material, laid out flat, and then glued on.
Yeah, essentially. And this is a last, right? So the upper is see, I think I yeah, let me grab one really quick. I have one
Yeah,
laying
yeah, yeah,
around.
go ahead.
All right. So this is the upper like before it's assembled or
Oh wow.
it's partially assembled, right? So the back is glued and then let's see, this is the last. So you kind of just drop it on the last and
Mhm.
there will be like a forming process where this basically takes on the shape. Once this is all assembled, then it goes on to the bottom.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So all these parts are 3D printed and just yeah, it's kind of like a 2 or 3 step assembly process.
Right, and you use some sort of adhesive for when you're going from
Yeah,
attaching them together.
some special glue. Yeah.
Okay. Some special glue.
Yeah, special sauce.
Yeah, I mean, and I find it pretty cool that there's really not many other companies doing this right now too. And
Mhm.
I wonder you would have better perspective on this, like being on the manufacturing side. But do you think part of the reason is because it's challenging to make a football boot? It's just a hard
Mhm.
thing to do.
Yeah, I could say that about shoes in general.
Hmm.
Shoes are just once you start doing it, you it's yeah, I didn't realize what I was getting into when I started. I mean, I've iterated probably over 100 prototypes by this
Hmm.
point, and when I started, I was like, oh, be a year and I'll be selling tons of product. But yeah, the foot is just like a very elegant structure. You really have to understand how to interface with it. And especially when it comes to performance, like it gets even more the small details get even more
Mhm.
important. So the fit
Yeah.
and the lockdown, I think that's something that we finally kind of gotten right. And a lot of that comes down to the shape of the last. So it's like
Mhm.
this very organic, kind of smoothed out shape around your foot. It's not just like an offset of the scan of your foot. There's a lot of fine detail in the toe box shape and where it needs to be snug in the midfoot and in the heel. And so that's actually been probably a significant portion of those iterations of prototypes has been getting that fit right,
Mhm.
and getting it reproducible between different types of feet because people's feet are very different.
Right.
So yeah,
It's fun. So I agree. It's people's feet are different, 100% in terms of size, but in a way, like the mistake that a lot of the big brands make kind of is the same, whether
sure,
they make
yeah,
cleats or not. And while everyone's feet are different, I would probably stipulate that most people's feet are widest at the toes, like naturally,
yeah, yeah.
if they were, so
There's patterns, yeah, like
there's patterns that emerge, and I think that's one of the reasons why like a lot of these barefoot shoe companies, like some of the companies I mentioned before that make more like lifestyle oriented shoes,
mhm.
I think they've done so well. And they're also able to sell their shoes kind of at a premium compared to other lifestyle shoes because the marketing almost does itself.
Yeah, it speaks for itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like these shoes like are shaped how your feet are supposed to be shaped.
Hmm.
So I'm curious. So obviously, your company currently you're just doing custom individual pairs at the moment. So for that process, are you making an individual last for each pair that you go through?
Yeah, yeah. Every
Mhm.
pair that we make is completely bespoke. So
Right.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And so obviously there's that could be tough for like long term scaling. Like if you're gonna sell like 10,000 pairs in a month,
Hmm.
could be tough to do like custom lasts for each. Do you have any plans in the future, or do you have a vision for the future for something with set sizes? And I know this is something that we talked about like previously. What's your vision for the future for going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that I've I don't know, chewed on for a while, but I think if the right manufacturer reached out and
Mhm.
they had good experience with athletic footwear and maybe even 3D printing, that would be amazing. Because I mean, there's some advantages to the system, even if you're not doing bespoke, making shoes on demand. So like you don't have to have inventory. It's a
Right.
different it's kind of a different business model, and so I think there's a space for standardized sizing that's cheaper than our current prices. Obviously, our prices are very high right now, but still doing it 3D printed. So
Right.
I have talked with like I've talked to it's interesting. I've talked to shoe manufacturers, and then I've also talked to like some of the bigger 3D printing farms. And so far, like neither of them is like is there's some special sort of knowledge that goes with our process that neither of them is really has.
Right.
So yeah, but it could be worth reaching out and like partnering with one of these people eventually. Right
Mhm.
now, I think we're just like there's enough still changing in the
Mhm.
formula that it's not like quite the right time.
Yeah.
But I definitely want, I mean, the ultimate goal is to help athletes not have as many injuries. So, and to
Yeah.
do that, you need a more affordable product, and that would be the way. Um, so yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on it. It's not the main focus quite yet.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's I think there's a lot of benefits to the custom made model because, and I think there's a lot of people that are in that market as well. Like they want something that fits their feet specifically.
Mhm.
The only like one benefit, like with price aside, one thing I think about when I think of various sizes is, and I'm curious if you thought about this, but some people, it's like they have different preferences for how tight or how loose they want their boots to fit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like some people like having like, half centimeter at the edge of their boots, whereas some people want it to be like so tight that they almost don't even have to do the laces.
Mhm.
So it's just like the boots are just on from the get-go. So that's one thing I think about when I think of like set sizes, because it almost allows for people to do their own. You can do your own customization between the sizes that you pick.
Right, right.
Right.
The one challenge with that, which it has, I think, kind of been solved in some ways, is that each brand can be slightly different, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it seems like nowadays, I mean, there's a review on YouTube for practically every shoe out there, so you can kind of like know what you're getting with which size you're buying. But yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, I guess, with like
Mhm.
people's idea of what a good fit is different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like part of the challenge that we have when we make a fully custom shoe. I remember in your video too, you mentioned like, oh, I kind of usually like a little extra space, but we made it like almost perfect to your toe shape.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
it's a different feeling.
It is a different feeling, and I think part of the reason I'm used to having a little bit more space is because like on more conventional boots, if there isn't about like a centimeter of space at the front, then my toes would get crushed from the sides.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of used, like I'm it's you could say it's like wired in, like engraved. I'm so used to having that like adjustability. Um, and I touched on it earlier because like it's a comment that I see like so many people leave. Like so many people think that they have wide feet. And not that their feet aren't wide, but it's like I get so many comments on my videos, or even if I just do a review that like, is this good for wide feet? And the truth is, it's like most people like that think they have wide feet. Your feet aren't abnormally wide or wider than the norm. Your feet are shaped how they should be shaped. Like your feet are fine. There's nothing there's nothing wrong with your feet. It's like the shoes that you're going into that are narrow. And that's what I think is like the coolest thing about what you're doing, like about the final product that you deliver, like after all the processes, is that it actually does just like fit the shape of your feet anatomically how it's supposed to. And it's very cool that you're doing it. And it's honestly very surprising that there's not like 100 other companies trying to do the same thing right now. Like it's a clearly it's still very much like an emerging market.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hear you. It
Yeah.
sounds like you're saying there definitely is. I mean, so there's a demand for it, but is it almost kind of like a demand where people don't really know they're like what they need?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. It
So there's
is.
education that has to kind of go along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an education. I mean, a soccer similar to like basketball, like similar to the NBA. It's the things that people wear are as much of a fashion statement as anything else. It's I mean, I'd say probably soccer and basketball are the two sports where you can probably see that the most. I mean, with basketball, athletes come out with their own shoes.
Right.
And whether or not a shoe is popular, the comfort of that shoe is maybe not even ranking in like the top 3 or the top 5 factors that's considered. It's the comfort is kind of left in the dust. But I don't think that's true for all people that play the sport. I think that with a lot of the people searching for this stuff on YouTube, looking for football boots for wide-footed players, there's definitely a big section of people that play that don't care about the marketing, that don't care about whether or not Mbappe or Ronaldo has worn the shoe, and they just want something that's comfortable, something, they might just be a Sunday league player. Um, and they just want something that's going to work for them.
Right.
But granted, like to your point, there's absolutely a big portion of the market that, is, they're driven by, trends, by fashion, by what looks the coolest.
Mhm.
And, it's a big reason, Nike is where they are today. And so I definitely think that education, will play a part in it.
Yeah. But maybe
Mhm.
what the like to really break into the mass market, you kind of need a face. You need someone who
Mhm.
like hopefully authentically believes in like what a healthier shoe is, and
Mhm.
then has the popularity in their sport already where they could bring in a big chunk of people to this
Yeah,
idea. I mean, the thing is though, a lot of those top athletes are getting paid a good chunk of cash
for
to
sure.
wear Adidas or Nike.
For
So
sure.
but I'm hoping. I mean, I have some leads on some athletes. We'll see.
Mhm.
um, Not necessarily in soccer, but that's kind of like right now. That's what I'm planting some seeds and getting some cleats out there to see, because I think there are some athletes who really are just like any edge they can get on the longevity, they're going to go for it.
Mhm.
So if I can get one of those big names and then they can speak to the product, I think that opens people's minds up more
Yeah.
than maybe
I,
a YouTube podcast.
yeah, for some people that's going to be what convinces them, like, to
Yeah,
start wearing. I mean, New Balance just got Endrick. I don't know, he's 17-year-old out of Brazil.
sure. That's a
He's
big name for them to get.
it's a huge name, potentially a huge name,
Yeah,
because he could be the next big thing. And speaking, I mean, New Balance is probably, of the big brands, maybe one of the lesser evils as far as, companies that make uncomfortable shoes.
yeah, yeah. I haven't worn a New Balance, I don't think, but do they have some? Don't they give a wide option for some of their shoes?
Okay, yes, but I've got, so they do, but so I've got the 442s. That's their leather football boot, and I've
Uh-huh.
got that here. But their wide football boot is deceiving because the sole plate of their standard variation and their wide version is the same.
Mm-hmm.
What's different is with the wide variation of their boots, there's basically just more volume to the upper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's just more material. So it's is there
That's
more?
yeah,
There's more space in the boot, but it's kind of a cheating a little bit to
yeah,
call it that.
yeah.
Um,
Which is, it's interesting. Even the top athletes, from what I've seen, are getting a similar or the same stud plate. Like
mhm,
maybe like changes in the stiffening
mhm.
plate like underneath it. But like stud pattern wise, I think they're getting pretty much what everyone else gets for the most part.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
You're talking about the sole plates that like professionals wear?
Yeah, like Messi or Ronaldo, are they getting the same stud pattern plate like under their foot, or do you think it's a little bit different, like slightly different
Yeah.
materials?
Well, players like Messi and Ronaldo, they're probably getting fully custom boots from the upper all the way to the sole plate. I mean, some of those players, most high profile players, wear boots that most people can't even buy. Like
Right,
they'll wear like previous versions of like a Nike or an Adidas model that isn't on the market anymore. And the companies will like continue to produce those boots in small batches just for them.
right.
That's what Tony Cruz does in Germany with like the Adipure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will know. I think a lot of the players in the Premier League wear soft ground
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Which, and I just started to notice this. When I was sort of reviewing boots, I noticed it more and more. And I think that's mostly because they play in England on natural grass where it's
Yeah.
frequently wet and muddy.
Right.
So most players in the Premier League, you see those like metal, like the longer metal studs.
Hmm.
They're still conical, so they're gonna like allow for like the free rotation and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they have like those longer SG studs because they're usually playing in like, but they're playing in like the mud.
Right. But that's like this. I'm just saying that's the same plate that you could potentially buy retail. Like are
Yeah,
I think for the most from what I've seen, like I think Boot Wizard, is that his name? He did a review of a messy like
Hmm.
pair, um, like a legit pair of messy cleats that he somehow got his hands on that were supposed to like messy
Oh,
would have actually worn, and he
yeah,
was showing the cleat plate as like, oh, that's pretty much the same F50 plate or whatever.
yeah.
He had a name for it, but I don't know. I was just pointing that out because like this stud pattern that you get on the
Mhm.
BioCleat and like you've been showing off is actually different. So it's like if you do have a really wide foot, the studs will actually be underneath where your bone
Oh,
structure is. And that's
right,
what's
right.
like, and that kind of goes to the point about the New Balance shoe. It's like they have the same plate even if you have a wider foot. So it's
Yeah.
not really like there's an anatomical benefit to having a stud under the actual pressure point of your foot.
Right, right. And yeah, that's another benefit of the customized, like making individual lasts, right?
Yeah,
So you're
right.
getting that stud placement in the perfect spot. And I have to say, this is one of the best, like for artificial grass, like this is what like an AG sole plate should look like. I think I counted there was maybe over 20 in total.
Sounds about right.
But yeah, it's definitely the way to go. Yeah, I was curious. You said you're working with some athletes from other sports. Are that like lacrosse? What are you seeing mostly?
Yeah, it's between lacrosse, baseball, and football, American football. And
Mhm.
then maybe one or two rugby cleats out there. Not as common. But yeah, I'd say probably American football has been the other most common sport. And then baseball is I feel like we have some professional athletes that we're testing with because it is kind of it's probably one of the more different cleats
Mhm.
from like our standard. So we're trying out some different things for them. But yeah, I think it's pretty spread out. Like I think between soccer and American football, it's maybe each has about 30% of our sales, something like that.
Yeah. And
So
yeah, there'll be demand across all sports for sure. Anything that's played on grass, it will have the demand.
yeah, and typically we're getting customers who have like very wide feet. Like you're right, there's like the average width,
Hmm.
and most people are in that category. But there's some people who do have like legit like the width of their foot. I mean, you look at my boot, right? This
Yeah.
shape, like I have a very wide forefoot actually.
Hmm.
Well, I think I'm like a D or an E width,
Hmm.
somewhere around there. So yeah, some people really the anatomy of their foot, even though it follows kind of a similar pattern of a shape of a foot, there
Hmm.
can be like little, irregularities in certain widths or
Yeah.
heights. So
There's some people who can't get something off the shelf. Like
yeah,
it just won't work for them.
yeah, the outliers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's super exciting. Like I know that you're pretty active on social too, so I'm expecting like we'll see some updates like in the months to come, like as you test these with different athletes, as you like grow the company. That's something you're going to be showing people too? You're going to be like, where can people follow you if they want to check you out on social media?
Yeah, Instagram, we're probably the most active, and then
Okay.
YouTube for kind of longer form content. And I mean, our website, prevolvefootwear.com, has probably like the most in-depth information, just if you want to go really deep into the details of the cleat.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're constantly iterating, creating more information. Because yeah, shoes are crazy, man. They're just like there's so much to having a good fit and good performance. So
Yeah, man. When barefoot and minimalist shoes were getting big like a year ago, I thought to myself, like, man, this would be a great business to start. I was like, I need to start creating like a barefoot soccer cleat. I was like,
mm,
that's the thing to do. So like when I came across your company and saw that there was like people already pursuing this idea, I just, I think it's the coolest thing.
are you still playing yourself? Like, what's your current situation?
Yeah, so I play relatively casually now. So I play in a like a men's league where I live on the East Coast. and it's relatively casual. It's like a men's 8v8.
Okay.
The most competitive I've ever played was when I did UPSL, and
Hmm.
that was about 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I have a full-time job and I do this on the side. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so when I was doing UPSL, that was 3 practices a week and then a game on the weekend. It's like my body
That's a lot. Yeah.
was catching up with me. Yeah, the 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. practices did me in eventually.
That's crazy.
Uh,
That's too late, man.
but it was yeah. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Um I think eventually it's just like how many goal kicks can you head before you're like, man, I don't know if I can take another concussion.
Yeah, it's tough in the U.S. too to make it professionally in soccer at all. It's just there's not that many actually paid spots.
Oh,
And there's so many players. It's like,
yeah, I mean it's extremely hard. I mean, and for people that don't live outside the U.S., so you're on the West Coast, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I personally think like I've grown up here in the greater like DC area. I think the level of youth soccer is extremely high. I like
yeah,
kids. There's ballers out here. I mean, I've played,
absolutely.
and to your point, it's like some of the best kids I've ever played. They're maybe getting paid a little bit they're probably like semi-pro, maybe getting paid a little bit per game, probably not enough to live on.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean the best team I ever played was I think Nova FC. That's Northern Virginia FC. They play in USL 2.
okay,
So that's I don't even know what that is. What is that, like third or fourth division? Like maybe third or fourth tier.
yeah,
Yeah, those kids were they beat us pretty soundly, but those were the best players I've ever played against, and they, I mean, are still only semi-pro at that. And I mean, man, you should have
yeah.
seen the kids scoring like half volleys from outside the box, like some of the best dribblers I played against. It's intense. Like the level for people outside of America, because I know that maybe the MLS doesn't always do the best job of showcasing everything that American soccer has to offer.
Mhm.
But among the youth, the level is there. I mean, kids are really, really, really good here.
Yeah, I feel like if we only had more of like the European system where there was like pretty much a direct path to playing professional where you can
Yeah,
stay at a club and go all the way up. I mean, I know now the MLS teams have more academy teams.
MLS next, things like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah, but it's still it's nowhere near the sort of the systemization that they have in like England where there's like 9 tiers or something and it's like you win your league in the ninth division, you move up and it's just like a gradual, ladder of progression. Which I think here it's like you kind of just got to get a little bit lucky.
yeah. I think it's not easy to go pro or be professional wherever you live.
Sure.
At least that's what I've heard from most people that have made it. But like, it's even harder in the States, I think, compared to other countries.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I still I love the soccer community here. I mean, I went to University of Maryland, and I mean the games were free to see,
Mhm.
and that was some of the crazy high level of competition, like college,
Yeah.
D1 college soccer in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
The athleticism is insane.
yeah, it's great. I couldn't even imagine. I'd probably tear both ACLs out there if I was
Yeah.
there for a second. But yeah, I know we've gone over our planned 30-minute time, but yeah, I
It's
mean,
been an interesting conversation, man.
yeah, it's been really cool to kind of pick your brain about about the company, about where you see
Yeah.
yourself moving forward.
Before we end it though, could I ask like what's kind of your plan? I mean, so this is a
Yeah,
part-time thing, but like where do you see this going and how is it going?
yeah. So it's been going good. I personally always wanted to and I was always interested in having something outside of my job to build and work on. About 3 or 4 years ago, I had a channel that was it was mostly related to music. I play guitar, so
Hmm.
I was like just doing covers, teaching a few songs, and that was actually a lot of fun. I think I got up to like 1,000 subscribers on that channel. But then I realized that music was kind of a thing where uh, I didn't want to have necessarily anything that I could relate to the idea of a business to it, because it kind of took the fun out of it,
Sure.
and it wasn't like a relationship that I wanted to have with music. And one day I just asked myself, I was like, what's something that if I chose, I could see myself talking about this, making content about this for 5, 10 plus years down the road, and be happy about it, even if it was going nowhere. If I would still be happy making content about it. And for me, football, or soccer, that would, both my parents are from the UK. That's why I say football a lot. But that was just the answer that made sense for me, because I've been playing the sport and a fan of the sport for most of my life. And then it just started out really small. I like doing the reviews of football boots, because I already had too many pairs to begin with. So I was like, oh, this could be a good entry point.
Mhm.
Um, and I still enjoy doing that. I don't really want football boots to be the only thing that I talk about on my channel. I'm trying to branch out more into some like fitness and soccer specific training content too, because that's something I care about a lot. And I like making videos about that. And then potentially just some more you know cultural or like topical commentary about soccer. Like, I'm a fan of the
Mhm.
game. I watch the game. I'm a Chelsea fan, unfortunately, and
Sorry, man.
yeah, it's tough. So yeah, I think hopefully the channel, as time goes on, it'll have like broader influences. Hopefully I'll get the chance to talk to other people as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, football boots have been a I guess, great starting point for the channel, and it's something it gives me an opportunity to go out and play when I
Yeah.
um when I try on the boots. And that in and of itself is awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's also based on what I've created, a topic that people are interested in. People seem to gravitate towards the reviews, best of lists, things like that. So part of it is, I'm trying to give people at least what I think that they want, or what I think they might be interested in,
Mhm.
and balance that with what I'm also interested in.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I plan to continue. I think I checked maybe 85 or 86 long form videos. And hopefully we'll hit 100 maybe by sometime in May.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's been great. I mean, I was terrified when I first started out, make it like sitting in front of a camera talking. It's scary. But
Well, I mean, your review for the BioCleat, man, it was great. Like, I thought that the quality was really good. Like, I'm curious, do you script out what you're gonna say beforehand?
yeah, so I outline the main topics I want to talk about in the video. So the entire video will at least have some sort of outline to it. It will take me maybe between 1 and 2 hours to throw together, and that's mostly like bullet points. The only thing that'll be maybe word for word is the first like 20 seconds, like the intro,
Mm,
because that'll be something where I don't want to have to make that up on the fly. I want that to be kind of
on point. Yeah.
I don't want to really have to think about that in particular,
Yeah.
except for when I'm writing it. But yeah, it was a journey to get there. Buying some equipment, like getting a camera for making the videos, and figuring out the editing software, stuff like that. But I will say the shorts were, for me, a big part of what made things all possible for me to get started, because it was so quick to make those.
Yeah.
Like, and that goes for any short form content. So like TikTok, which might be banned in a couple weeks, but TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts, it's kind of cool because you can create one video, and you can create a high quality short inside of 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So like come up with the idea, briefly script it, shoot it, and edit it inside of 20 minutes, and have it uploaded to 3 different platforms. Because I started my TikTok just as a second place to post my YouTube shorts. And that grew that's at almost 10,000 followers. That ended up growing the fastest.
Hmm.
And it was until I think I did about 30 to 40 of those short videos was when I was like, all right, I'll try one long form video where I'm just like sitting talking. It goes about 10 minutes. So it was like, baby steps
Yeah.
to get
That's
there.
good though. I mean, you're kind of following the like where your success is. I think that's probably a good approach.
Yeah, I hope so. And as I said, I wanted to choose something where even if things weren't, uh, if it seemed financially difficult or wasn't like the quickest path to money, it was something I would still be interested in the long term.
Mhm.
Because having chased other things in the past, I've realized it's if you're not really interested in something, when the going gets tough, um, you will quit. Like you'll stop.
Yeah.
Like it has to be something that like I feel like you care about to some degree, so that
Yeah.
when things are like a little bit frustrating, you have that perseverance, motivation to like get through those times.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You need to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's good. I'm glad you're asking me these questions. I rarely talk to that many people about
Yeah.
about YouTube in general.
I mean, it does seem like there's more boot reviewers coming online, like that I've seen in the past like year or so. So that would be my only like I don't know, curiosity for you is like how do you set yourself apart maybe from
Mhm.
this growing? Because I mean, Josh SR for you, he's been
Yeah,
around forever.
that guy
He's
rocks.
yeah, he's kind of
He's
got
so good.
his own thing, right? So he's
Yeah.
kind of established, but I think there's like there's definitely room for more than one, reviewer. But it's like who's
Oh yeah.
gonna and I guess Unisport has been around for a while as well.
Yeah, they're very big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say like to anyone like interested in starting their own thing, like whether it be your own company, especially like if it's to do with content creation, like creating a YouTube channel, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Like if there's a lot of other people in the same niche, if anything, that means that it's a good that there's opportunity there. That
Yeah, sure.
if there's people there, and
Yeah.
everyone has something unique to offer. I'm a big believer that anyone, like any voice, has something unique to offer.
Hmm.
I think it's a thing that will oftentimes like discourage people. They'll see someone like creating videos at like a high level and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm interested in this topic, but this person's already making videos about it and they're so good. What
Hmm.
like I mean, I could easily pull up a Unisport video right now that has 5 million views on it, very well produced, well edited, great sound, great lighting, great cameras. And I could make 10 reasons just from that video as to like why I shouldn't, why you shouldn't make a video. Um, but yeah, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think that definitely like anyone can have, something unique to offer, and there's no reason to like pigeonhole yourself as one thing either. Like I am a reviewer of something.
Hmm.
It is definitely something that I do, but I'm hoping to branch out more from there and hopefully like bring more of a balance, like so I can have both things. Um, and yeah, I don't know if this is like answering your question, but yeah, I'm like just wandering on some like broad
Oh, that's
tangent now.
cool.
But yeah, I definitely think that if there's competition, it's like
Sure, yeah.
whatever. I mean, don't copy someone's video. Don't like come out same thumbnail, same script.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do stuff like that. But as long as you're not doing stuff like that, and to your point, one thing I have started doing, and I almost didn't notice this, but like I don't watch Josh's the SR soccer reviews for you. I actually don't. I try and avoid watching his videos on boots that I might be talking about
Mm.
because I don't want to like like hear him say something
Yeah.
and then kind of unintentionally have that inform my opinion. Because that's so easy to do. It's like you hear one person talk about something
Hmm.
and you're like, oh, I'll do my own unbiased version. But like
Hmm.
you still have that, the
Yeah.
little voice in your head. So that's one thing that I do differently now is that I try and avoid watching similar content just because I don't want to like accidentally say something. Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
repeat someone else's words and get into something like that.
That makes sense. And honestly, I mean, I'm happy that like people like you are like getting into the space because actually the more voices there are, if you are looking for a boot and you can get multiple different opinions on it, you can kind of triangulate and be like,
Yeah.
oh, they're all saying this same thing. Like, okay, that must be like pretty accurate then. So
Yeah, one thing with review content from the searcher's point of view. I love audio. Like I love like speakers, things like that. Like if I'm looking for reviews on a speaker, I'm probably gonna watch like not just the first review I see. I might watch like 5.
right.
Yeah, because I'm trying to. Like, what did this guy say? What did this guy say? What did this guy say? Like,
Yeah.
and then you can kind of you try and make your own kind of Frankenstein opinion
Yeah.
from like 5 or 10 different perspectives. And no, yeah, I hopefully I bring like like I feel like I talk about some stuff that some other companies or some other creators haven't referenced. There's like a small company out of Japan called Adler that make like leather football boots. I got a chance to review their boots. It's hard to find content about them, maybe just because they're a smaller company.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I definitely, yeah, I think
You
it's,
reviewed the bio cleat.
yeah, I reviewed the bio cleats. So I like when
Yeah.
there's these like opportunities maybe to talk about things that are like might not get the same coverage from other places, from other outlets. So
That's
there's
great.
an opportunity there. Yeah, dude, I feel like we have to if I ever go out west, it's funny, I'm actually going to Utah in like a week. But if I ever go out to the West Coast, we should link up and hit the field.
Definitely, man. Let's knock the ball around and yeah, just talk soccer. I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan too, so
Oh my god.
one of my good friends is a Chelsea fan as well. So it's kind of like, yeah.
One of the many Arsenal fans. I can't avoid them. They're everywhere.
Yeah, we are kind of everywhere. But I mean, it's been so long since we've had success. I think it's hard for us to like stay quiet.
You never know, man. It could be looking up for you this season.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, we're in the run for some things here. We'll see.
You got a good Champions League draw coming.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's okay.
Bayern Munich,
But
I think.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
Harry Kane might be hurt, so
Yeah, that could be on your side.
yeah.
Okay, well, I know we already talked about your social. So you're active on Instagram, Prevolve Footwear. And obviously, if you want to check out the boots, it's prevolvefootwear.com.
That's right.
And yeah, Oliver, it's been a pleasure. And hopefully, I'll get the chance to speak to you again at some point in the future as well.
Yeah, yeah. Let's definitely keep in touch. This was great.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again for the call, man.
Yeah. All right. Take
All right.
care,
Have a good
Douglas.
one. See ya.
See ya.